Peace and blessings, peace and blessings. And remember, we talked about the 7 arcs, the 7 seals, the 7 menorahs, the 7 candlesticks, or the 7 promises of the Most High, which is above our head, just like you see in this rainbow title. The 7 layers of Yah'S rainbow seals, the 7 churches, the 7 trumpets, the 7 days. Ah, boy, it's a lot, isn't it, with the Most High, huh? A lot of stuff that we are unaware of, but we're going to make it aware. We had a video about 3, 4, 5 days ago explaining in great detail what this is really about and what's above our heads and why they're called seals. So now we're going to go and let you know why you can be clueless in your physical body, but then go relax and meditate or just go to sleep in a trance and then have an answer for what you couldn't figure out in the lower self of the physical or the carnal mind. Same as how can you have a dream or an out-of-body experience, and they call that the imaginary world. But how? When some things you don't want to happen still affect your conscious reality. Yeah. So this world is fake. See, this world was formed from the thought. The thought within God. Remember it say God saw it was good. That was thinking within himself. So your subconscious and your dream world is the inner you. All of the records of your desires. And that's what projects in different emanations, archetypes. Sent by the higher powers, and we were worried about the archetypes. Oh, I saw a horned man. That ain't the doggone message. But pay attention what the man was showing you. You know what I'm saying? So that's where we went wrong in the scriptures. 4-faced things, winged beings. Ain't important. What the heck were they saying? What were they carrying? You see what I'm saying? And so now you understand that within yourself, you are as the Most High, as he had promised. He said these things. I'm not making up nothing. He said, if you believe my word, wherever I am, so are you. Whatever I do, so do you. And greater. Let's see.
Specifically enable. And it was only later then we developed the world's most powerful bliss binaural, flameinmind.com, which, of course, the board members of Monroe Institute, Chris Kleinput and Claude Swanson, they were deeply into, but Laurie Monroe just couldn't get it through her head that she had to learn what longitudinal interferometry was, or she'd never be able to
hold on. Here they go.
Optimize. And now we have the frequency signature, of course, Therify.net, imploding plasma, and we trigger lucid dreams regularly. And I have the slides here prepared. And then now recently we measured the electrical moment in the brainwaves of Jean-Charles Moyen when his lucid dream became a portal and bilocation. And we have proven clearly the physics of what that bilocation is, which is the implosion into a longitudinal wave coherently propelled, what Gurdjieff would call assembling the light body or the rainbow light body. It's actually a field of longitudinal EMF coherence. And we have the frequency signatures now, and we regularly trigger lucid dreams. And at greater brainwave densities, that is the beginning of the only definition of what a Stargate is.
Very good. So before
Shalom,
we
Joey.
Invite you to share your
blessings.
screen,
Blessings,
do you have any
Nay.
pointed questions for Dale Gray?
Mama Yolanda, blessings.
Well, does he know what coherent longitudinal
Walaikum
interferometry
salam,
is?
Nader Khan.
I have to confess, I have not heard of that term before.
Well,
You're not the only one, Dale. Interferometry. I mean, it sounds
I know what that is, but not the term, the way he's using it.
It's been called scalar or torsional, but that's the incorrect term. Coherent longitudinal EMF is driven through the Planck threshold, which is how the frequency signature is tuned. And that's the physics of what a Stargate is, clearly. And my film on that has been seen by about 50,000 people with Elena Denon on the physics of what a Stargate is.
But the torsional word, I think, goes back to some Soviet work I've been.
That's right, exactly. American psychotronics, they called it scalar, and the Russians called it torsional. And it wasn't a bad term. It's basically caduceus, but now we learn to optimize the frequency signature, what that is, of how you implode the transverse into coherent longitudinal propagation. And that's what was called the rainbow light body. And that's the coherence that you take with you when you lucid dream. And that also defines where you can lucid dream and look at your body from outside your body if you know where the longitudinal node is, explaining why sunrise and sunset work and magnetic line crosses work, and tuning the brainwave frequencies to optimize.
So Dan, share your screen. So now I want to bring David in after you've done your brain dump here.
Oh, great. Okay, so I'm just going to share just a couple little slides here. Lucid brain. Share. Here we go. So this is, Jean, do you see my screen here?
Yep.
Okay, so that's Jean-Charles Moyen, probably the world's most famous secret space program survivor, French. And this is the measurement of his brain waves here when his recurrent lucid dream became a portal and bilocation and stargate with witnesses. He went to the beach, came back with sand between his toes, and there were witnesses multiple times. And then we told him how to measure flameinmind.com. And you see the alpha to gamma cascade in the brain waves, 3 different measures here. The green is alpha here around 12 hertz, and the gamma is up here on top around 40 to 50 hertz. And the cascade has golden ratio, which are in blue, and octave harmonics, which are in pink. Basically, it's a tetracube embedded in a pent.
All right. Pink is Kamiel, spirit of love, regenerates all your relationships. Green is regeneration from all dis-ease of the soul or diseases of the body. That's Raphael. Blue is the double-edged sword, which is the plexiplores of your throat. Chakra, which cuts bone, marrow, soul, spirit. All right? So you understand. They just saying the colors, but I'm understand showing you what you were taught and not taught.
And that implosive ladder, caduceus, is called phase conjugation. And that's basically how you implode. If you look here, this is the side view of that caduceus cascade, which is converting the transverse EMF on the left into longitudinal EMF coherence on the right, sometimes incorrectly called scalar. And that tuning here is how the Therify works and how we built the world's most powerful bliss binaural. If you take the actual equation for phase conjugation, implosion, and negentropy, Planck times golden ratio, you get in blue here. Maybe this is a bit too small to see. And then in green on the bottom, 7.831420, you see the Schumann harmonics, and you see the phase lock to the brainwave harmonics. This is an intense bliss experience here in brainwaves on the left, but that's mine, but I didn't climb all the way to the gamma. However, when you get there, then you have children able to see without their eyes, and you have when lucid dreams become a portal and a stargate. So this is the actual equation harmonics here in pink. And below, these are the frequencies Antoine Priory used to heal thousands of cancers documented by the French government. So that is the physics of what's called Origin of Negentropy, the title of my book, and how Therify works. So we took those frequencies, we modulated in plasma, therify.net, doing rejuvenation commercially in 25 countries, and we regularly trigger lucid dreaming. And I'm going to turn off my sharing here for a moment.
Very good.
And so what happens is the out-of-body experience is precipitated when the aura is centripetal enough and implosive enough to convert the transverse EMF coherence into longitudinal projective interferometry, basically the rainbow light body or the Kesjan body, Gurdjieff called it. And that coherence specifically is measurable when the brain waves implode. And that density is what propagates the coherence. And so the ability, when kids see without their eyes, they see through a little vortex portal inside their head. And that plasma donut is what you take with you when you lucid dream. And when it's at higher amplitudes, that's called a stargate.
Very good.
It was the speed of light in his experiment was almost 1.618 times the traditional speed of light. And the means to measure it back in those days was not that accurate. So I propose it was it was 1 times 1.618. And that's interesting, Dan. If you look
Let's get some feedback. Let's get some feedback.
Yeah, okay.
That's an interesting point here. Dan, what's that giggle for?
Well, we said when the dominant velocity faster than light was measured at 1.618 times c, the speed of light, our theory of gravity would then be proven, as Tom Bearden says, longitudinal waves are gravity waves. And then Professor Raymond Chow measured it, indeed, between 1.5 and 1.7. So, yeah, exactly. And I think David's making a very good point, how you feel. The point I would make is, as in The Nine Faces of Christ, the famous book, determining how many organs of perception you take with you in your lucid dream, and there was a sequence of exercises in that book, is literally the amount of coherence you generate in what was called the higher being body or the Keshan body, which now we know exactly what that is. That is the coherence in the longitudinal field. So you can study how to grow your aura to that longitudinal coherence by measurement. And now we know the exact frequency signature. And last thought, the reason Tesla screwed up wireless power globally was because A, he didn't have the frequency signature. He didn't know my equation, Planck times Golden ratio. And B, he didn't know where the nodes were, the cross points, which are, of course, the dodecahedral Earth grids, which are the longitudinal nodes to enable global wireless power distribution. For example, Tesla chose 60 cycle, which was a huge mistake. The frequency at which the voltage required to stop the heart is lowest, whereas 50 hertz is required to grow carbon and all kinds of fullerenes and most common healing frequency cancer. So we've answered the question.
Right, indeed. Well, maybe
I think, if I may, that there was a pretty well documented episode when the government dragged Ingo Swann to remote view the backside of the moon, and he came back scared out of his wits and wrote the book. Previously, Ingo Swann was the one who demonstrated he could light a thermistor, literally a flame, with his mind. We called it flameinmind.com, the brainwave, for that reason. So he lit a flame with his mind through a Faraday cage at a distance. And now we know the frequency signature. We know the physics, why the longitudinal coherence could go through that Faraday cage. And by the way, Rick Hasson, who was one of the producers of Stargate, was the coordinator at Gaia TV when I helped found Gaia TV. And as producing Stargate, the letters they used on the ring of the Stargate were the shadows of the Ophanim-Enochian alphabet. And we know exactly the physics. That was hypercube plasma donut symmetry to implode and project longitudinal. So the physics has all confirmed the stories.
Well, activating Merkaba or, correspond or dovetail with this conversation?
Well, tetracubic symmetry, which is what Merkaba refers to poetically, tetracubic symmetry is essential to stabilizing. It's literally freezing like a crystal. And then on that ladder of coherence, it is possible to put the pent onto the hex. You tilt your head 32 degrees, the chin angle of the Sphinx, and you rotate, and the cube embeds 5 spin into dodeca, and it goes from hex to pent. And then implosion is possible, and then Stargate is possible. And if you don't do the last step, you're susceptible to parasites because you're not imploding. But I wanted to say something previous to this about non-locality. Actually, non-locality here is a name for inhabiting the array. And where you are centripetal in the array is where you have an organ of perception, because you implode, and that sorting at the phase conjugate point is the touch point to the stillness of the longitudinal array. So specifically, the distance to which you can propagate is the wavelength of the longest wave of coherence in that array. So, for example, you're inhabiting an array right now. It's called Indra's net, the synapses in your brain. When you inhabit a larger array and you get centripetal enough, then you don't need your body anymore. So the nature of the array is the point. And that array is a longitudinal coherence array. Dodecahedral Earth grid is just the beginning. But the fact that golden ratio is the dominant geometry of all stellar mechanics and gravity stabilization is a big clue.
Very
So, the higher Yah'S, the 7 seals, you got to go into the chest of God. In the Jews, you'll find a man's treasures. This is where it say, meditate on my word day in and night out. Meditate is not speaking. Meditate is channeling, absorbing information that are not put into words until a later time at your divine purpose. And so this is what they have taken from us and put in occultic traditions of men telling men and women what to do, when obviously you have been given the freedom of self. Within praying in the closet, that scripture, it means within your own mind. Once you express yourself outside of you, it's no longer a secret. Even if no one's around, you told the universe. But when you keep your thoughts within you, you cannot be judged. You're held accountable for what you do, folks. So, Shalom, I'm BC the Tishvite, Holy Ghost Power of Christ tip, and a short clip. Y'all enjoy y'all night.